Hi. Today I want to discuss a phenomenon that I know that many of you guys completely loathe, namely fizziness in guitar amp distortion. If we're going to define it, it's a kind of frequencies over 4.5 kilohertz. But it's, a clean guitar tone isn't fizzy. This is a question of the overtones from the distortion. If you play an electric guitar, the fundamentals are up to 1 kilohertz, and then kind of the overtones go to 5 kilohertz or something like that, and then it drops off really quickly. So there isn't much content coming from the guitar. That content is happening in the amp. When you overdrive it, when you push the gain, you get clipping, distortion, and all those overtones can go pretty high. And that's not that easy to control. It's also a system: guitar, amp, output transformer, speaker, and so on. And here you have to combine really well. The designer has to design it, of course, so the output transformer handles this and recommend speakers that are good for this. But you can also do experiments and combine to get as little fizziness as possible. Now there are different types of fizziness here. Some setups are just bright, so you can just have a low pass filter and it's going to sound good. But some have kind of spikes of nasty frequencies over 4 kilohertz, and then you kind of have to deal with it in another way. In this video, I'm going to show you some examples, and I'm also going to show you a number of ways how you can deal with this. So first, listen to a speaker that I would characterize as fizzy, at least with the completely crappy recording I did in the video where I featured it. So it's a 10-inch Celestian, 25 watter. Let's check it out. So this really sounds like a swarm of bass, but this is just a question of everything being too bright here, because it's a 1970 Marshall Blues Breaker through a way too bright speaker and recorded crappy. I kind of had the mic the dead center. But here it's just too bright. So if you roll off at kind of 8 kilohertz, you have a roll off of the high end. Then it sounds like this. So I don't know how to define fizziness. Maybe this was just too bright. In another video, I used the same speaker with a really cheap amp, a lead 12. And I kind of have a completely different mic position. And it sounds just amazing, I think. Let's check it out. So this is kind of more a question of a too bright speaker that needs to be dealt with in terms of recording and placement and all that, and maybe tweaking. So fizziness is the nasty fizziness is more a question of when frequencies gather or there are spikes of high frequencies that make it sound unnatural. Like there is some constant component just grabbing on to the top end that's in the way and kind of obscuring what is happening. Let's check out this sound. I'm using the hot plate here, and if you really push the hot plate to very low volumes, then you're gonna get a really fizzy tone. So no blame of the amp here. Let's quickly check out how the hot plate and most attenuators affect the sound, the fizziness that's added. So to salvage or to save this one, I two things to do. So the low pass filter at the very top first, because it's way too bright. But then there is also a component at around 4 kilohertz where there are kind of something that makes it sound synthetic. So you use a notch filter with a very high Q. I used 12 here. So you kind of scoop off 4 kilohertz, and then it goes up and you get some of that top end, and then at the very top, you basically from 10 to 20 kilohertz, you roll off aggressively. So check out how it becomes. Here is the curve as well. And I think that sounds good, but this is kind of emergency. Just in emergency cases, you use EQ. You should deal with it before in the chain. We're going to come to that now. At the end of the video, I'm going to show you some more EQing. I'm going to show you some Marshall cabs, both with the 75 Hz speakers and 55 Hz speakers, to see what are the potential fizziness problems there and how to deal with it with EQ. But first, I mean, when you play at low volumes with lots of preamp distortion and less pushing the entire amp, it's going to be fizzy. When you play loud, you benefit from pushing all the stages of the amp, and you benefit also from speaker distortion. Those things add information. So these kind of loose frequencies and gatherings are kind of filled out by other things if you do that. Another way to deal with fizziness or to avoid it is to combine speakers. Maybe you've heard of the JBL D120F that Van Halen used. He kind of combined that with the Greenback. So to many people, the D120 is kind of a harsh, not fizzy maybe, but harsh because it goes 1 kilohertz higher than most speakers. Most speakers go to 5 kilohertz and then rolls off. That one goes to 6 kilohertz. But when you combine the JBL with the Greenback, you get a big tone. So there are kind of if it feels like something that's in the way, well, that maybe there's a hole in the other speaker that kind of absorbs that. So it sounds great and big together. So here are two examples of that combination. One is the Alive 2 Kiss tone, and one is the Van Halen. So let's check it out. Now another example with the 1980 speakers is G1265 and G12T75. The T75 is scooped and has kind of a brittle top end, which can often seem fizzy to people. But the 65 kind of has another top end that's more present, but not as sparkly. So when you combine those two, you get a really solid tone. Let's check it out. If we look at the designer's side, there is an interesting way to deal with this. There's something called Sobel filter, and that's basically a cap and a resistor in series that you connect to the primary windings of the output transformer. Then you can tweak the values of those. By doing that, you shift the peak resonancy of the output transformer, and it rolls off in a very pleasant way. So it's a very dangerous mode, so don't try it yourself. Tommy Folkesson and Daniel Forsberg have both used this very successfully. And so check out this one, for instance. Here Daniel and I are trying one new output transformer and one old one. And the new one is kind of too bright. So we add the Sobel filter, or Daniel adds Sobel filter. Let's check it out. Now when Daniel and I recorded this, we wanted to see how we could make a sound that was already pretty good, but a bit cold, more vintage and organic sounding. But this also works even better if you have a more fizzy tone going in. Now we spoke about EQ earlier. I showed you EQ for one example. Now we're going to check out some classic Greenback cabs. We're first going to check out 75 Hertz Greenbacks, then 55 Hertz Greenbacks. So let's listen to the 1960A, which has the G12M 2575 Hertz Greenbacks. So here there's a fizziness, or it's a question of taste, but there's something constant at 3 to 4 kilohertz here. So if we check it out again, and then right after I'm going to put it EQ'd, then I'm going to show you the EQ curve as well. So I think applying the EQ makes it stick together better. It feels like a one big sound, not the sound with something going on top. But it's a matter of taste. I like the other sound too. It kind of sounds more three-dimensional maybe. Let's check it out for another 75 Hertz speaker. So here's the same frequency, but this one having the heavy magnet instead sounds a bit harsher, and it's a bit more like a constant tonality that just hangs on to the top end. So you can see for 75 Hertz speakers, the top end fizziness, or kind of where it kind of, the presence is 4 kilohertz or something like that. Now let's look at some 55 Hertz cabs as well. Now these are darker speakers than the 75 Hertz speakers, but the very top end presence, the sizzle on top, is actually higher. So here it's over 5 hertz. I think it's 6 kilohertz or something like that. Let's check it out. So there I removed something like 6 kilohertz instead. It's interesting to note that the 55 Hertz speakers have a sizzle that goes over the range of the guitar, because the overtones drop off at 5 kilohertz, whereas the 75 Hertz speakers have their sizzle at 4 kilohertz, something like that, which is within the range of the guitar. I don't know if it's significant. Another thing I note here with the, I think they sound colder, the H speakers. I don't know if it has anything to do with the different overtones of different order sounds. I mean, some of them sound less pleasant. For instance, the 7th overtone sounds not very nice. Maybe that plays in here as well. Maybe some of you guys know more about that. So if I'm going to summarize how to deal with fizziness, the first thing, of course, is what the designer can do to have an amp that has eliminated most of that. Well, the second thing is to combine it with speakers that are really good, and to make sure that the speakers are broken in. They're always a bit more fizzy in the beginning. Then you can combine speakers. For instance, Vintage 30 and G12 T75 are often combined because they have the two synthetic top ends make a big fat top end instead, because they kind of have holes that they fill out. Then the mic position, of course, really important. You know, when you're really close to the speaker, you're not picking up the entire sound. So then you need to be really careful where you put the mic, or you could use several mics to kind of balance it. So then all mics can sound harsh when you combine them. It sounds good. Then you can go to your amp tech and install a Sobel filter on your output transformer, and bring the speakers that you're going to use it with, because you tweak it with respect to a speaker. You can actually have install the Sobel filter, which you can change yourself and tweak depending on which speakers you have. And for most amps, you really need to push them, not just use the preamp distortion, but really push them so you get both the push the entire amp and also get the speaker distortion to kind of fill out and give more information. Now it's easy to get kind of obsessed with fizziness. If you look at many classic albums, the tones are actually pretty fizzy and harsh in some cases also. So it's only when you put it in the mix, you know, if it works or not. Maybe that crappy fizzy component is what will cut through. So it needs to be put into context. So to obsess too much over some principles in tone is kind of like a photographer that kind of ranks his cameras. You see, I'm photographing a brick wall 2 kilometers away, and I'm counting how many bricks I can see. It's kind of, that's kind of on the engineering side of photography. On the artistic side, it's kind of other things that counts, and the same with the guitar. But it's good to nerd, you know, really go into detail on the technical side. But in the final end, it's about the expression and you know what works. All right, now I want to know what you think. And if you have done experiments or stuff that relates to this, feel free to post links here on the channel so all the guys can check it out. Cheers.